This is part 5 of Federalist 84. We're going to start with paragraph 9, and I'm going to make fewer comments as I read this, because this is already a long enough Federalist paper. One of the important things that you see on the screen is, and I've mentioned it before, there's two works two pieces of writing by James Madison before he went to the Federal Convention. He had asked Thomas Jefferson, who was in England, to send him as many books as he possibly could about the Confederations, ancient and modern. So he made sure he took a note from all of those in 1786. And in 1787, he again studied and saw what had happened in the 13 states from 1776 to 1787. And he wrote Vices of the Political System of the United States. You can access these in the National Archives website or other places. They're available. Just take a look at them. These are what guided him through all of this time. Why he thought the Articles of Confederation were awful. Why we needed a new constitution. Why a new constitution needed to have two branches in the legislature. Why, on and on and on. Everything that you see that's good about this constitution, you can kind of find their origins right here in these two writings. So those are important. I'll go ahead and start reading, starting paragraph 9. I go further and affirm that Bills of Rights, in the sense and in the extent in which they are contended for, are not only unnecessary in the proposed Constitution, but would even be dangerous. Oh, look, this is what I say. He just goes way overboard, way too much to the crazy side. They would contain various exceptions to powers which are not granted, and on this very account would afford a colorable pretext to claim more than were granted. For why declare that things shall not be done which there is no power to do? Why, for instance, should it be said that the liberty of the press shall not be restrained, when no power is given by which restrictions may be imposed? I will not contend that such a provision would confer a regulating power, but it is evident that it would furnish to men disposed to usurp a plausible pretense for claiming that power. They might urge with a semblance of reason that the Constitution ought not to be charged with the absurdity of providing against the abuse of an authority which was not given, and that the provision against restraining the liberty of the press afforded a clear implication that a power to prescribe proper regulations concerning it was intended to be vested in the national government. This may serve as a specimen of the numerous handles which would be given to the doctrine of constructive powers, but by the indulgence of an injudicious zeal for Bills of Rights. On the subject of the liberty of the press, as much has been said, I cannot forbear adding a remark or two. In the first place, I observe there is not a syllable concerning it in the Constitution of this state, and in the next, I contend that whatever has been said about it in any other state amounts to nothing. Well, here he is definitely, this is one part that I think, as you read along, you see that he was really wrong. Because, for example, he could not see that almost 10 years later, in President John Adams' administration, laws were passed called Alien and Seditions Acts, which actually went after people who were saying stuff about the government. So that's why you needed a Bill of Rights, because you just can't, as we have said on and on, power corrupts people, regardless of who they are. So you need to make sure that there are mechanisms in place to not allow that to happen, or if it happens, to be able to block it and control it and get rid of it. What signifies a declaration that the liberty of the press shall be inviolably preserved? What is the liberty of the press? Who can give it any definition which would not leave the utmost latitude for evasion? I hold it to be impracticable, and from this I infer that its security, whatever fine declarations may be inserted in any constitution respecting it, must altogether depend on public opinion and on the general spirit of the people and of the government. And then he gives a long footnote. Now, he does have a point here, by the way. He says, if, in a way, he's saying if people are fools, if majority of people, passions take over and they're foolish, sometimes it's silly to think that just the liberty of the press is going to stop these people from doing foolish things, that you're going to be able to reason with them. Because he knows the bad side of human nature. And throughout these papers, he's shown it, he's talked about it. Okay, let me read the long footnote that he's given. To show that there is a power in the Constitution by which the liberty of the press may be affected, recourse has been had to the power of taxation. It is said that duties may be laid upon publications so high as to amount to a prohibition. I know not by what logic it could be maintained that the declarations in the state constitutions in favor of the freedom of the press would be a constitutional impediment to the imposition of duties upon publications by the state legislatures. It cannot certainly be pretended that any degree of duties, however low, would be an abridgment of the liberty of the press. We know that newspapers are taxed in Great Britain, and yet it is notorious that the press nowhere enjoys greater liberty than in that country. And if duties of any kind may be laid without a violation of that liberty, it is evident that the extent must depend on legislative discretion, regulated by public opinion, so that after all general declarations respecting the liberty of the press will give it no greater security than it will have without them. The same invasions of it may be effected under the state constitutions which contain those declarations through the means of taxation, as under the proposed constitution which has nothing of the kind. It would be quite as significant to declare that government ought to be free, that taxes ought not to be excessive, as that the liberty of the press ought not to be restrained. Then we'll go back to the text itself, and here, after all, as intimated upon another occasion, must we seek for the only solid basis of all rights. There remains but one other view of this matter to conclude the point. The truth is, after all the declamations we've heard, that the Constitution is itself in every rational sense, and to every useful purpose, a Bill of Rights. The several Bills of Rights in Great Britain form its constitution, and conversely, the constitution of each state is its Bill of Rights. And the proposed constitution, if adopted, will be the Bill of Rights of the Union. Is it one object of a Bill of Rights to declare and specify the political privileges of the citizens in the structure and administration of the government, Remember, this is when I said that when he mentions that separation of powers, checks and balances, judicial independence, all of those, election at set times, set intervals, all of those in itself is a Bill of Rights. So he says, we've actually included that in the Constitution. That is part of the framing of the Constitution. This is done in the most ample and precise manner in the plan of the Convention, comprehending various precautions for the public security which are not to be found in any of the state constitutions, is another object of a Bill of Rights to define certain immunities and modes of proceedings which are relative to personal and private concerns. This, we have seen, has also been attended to in variety of cases in the same plan. So he's talking about, and when he says the second part, he's talking about writs of habeas corpus, ex post facto laws, things that we said at the beginning of this Federalist. He says, we've given you that double security. It is absurd to allege that it is not to be found in the work of the Convention. It may be said that it does not go far enough, though it will not be easy to make this appear. But it can with no propriety be contended that there is no such thing. It certainly must be immaterial what mode is observed as to the order of declaring the rights of the citizens if they are to be found in any part of the instrument which establishes the government. And hence it must be apparent that much of what has been said on this subject rests merely on verbal and nominal distinctions, which are entirely foreign from substance of the thing. So some of the things they've said, it's just even some of these criticisms are not even don't even relate to this Constitution, because some of the quotes they give you, some of the statements they make, and they say this Constitution says this, it's incorrect. So it's just their imagination and their propaganda in a sense.